My name is Eleanor Voss. I am 92 years old. I am sitting at the same kitchen table where I have eaten breakfast alone for the past 11 years, in a small house in Tucson, Arizona. And I want to tell you something that took me 9 decades to finally understand. Your gut has been talking to you since the day you were born. Not as some mystical idea, literally, constantly. The tightening in your stomach before a meeting you shouldn't be in. The heaviness in your chest that settled in your mid-30s and never fully left. The inexplicable nausea the morning you accepted the job that looked perfect on paper. You learned to ignore all of it. You got very good at it. I know because I did the same thing. For 92 years I treated my body like a reliable old car. Filled it with whatever was available. Drove it harder than I should have. Ignored every warning light and told myself I would deal with it properly when things slowed down. Things did not slow down. They never do. In the spring of 2019, at 85 years old, my body stopped asking politely. No dramatic crisis, no hospital bed. I simply woke up on an ordinary Tuesday and could not get out of bed. Not from pain. Not from any clinical reason. Something inside me had stopped cooperating with the life I was living. And it was communicating that refusal in the only language I had left it, the language of the body, the language I had spoken fluently as a child, before the world taught me that logic and productivity mattered more than what I felt in my bones. Here is what most people never get told. Your gut contains over 500 million nerve cells, more neurons than your entire spinal cord. It is connected to your brain by the longest nerve in your body, and it sends information upward far more than it receives it downward. Your gut is not waiting for instructions from your brain. Your gut is sending them. And for most of your life you have been doing everything possible to make sure those instructions never reach the people making the decisions. You call it being rational. I called it the same thing for 60 years. Then I sat with what it had cost me. It was not one dramatic loss. It was quieter than that. It was a life that functioned perfectly and felt, from the inside, like wearing someone else's clothes every single day. Let me tell you about Patricia. Patricia Hale was 44 when I met her in 1987. We worked at the same company in Denver. The first thing I noticed was her laugh, completely unguarded, the kind that made the whole room turn around. Within a few months I understood that laugh was the most honest thing about her. Everything else had been carefully managed. Patricia had wanted to study nutrition at 22, not as a strategy. She was genuinely fascinated by the relationship between food and the body. The way some people are drawn to things that seem to have chosen them first. Her father sat her down and explained, with real kindness, that nutrition was not a serious field, that the practical choice was business. She chose business. She was good at it. That was the trap. In the break room one winter afternoon in 1989, she said something I have thought about ever since. She said, "Eleanor, do you ever feel like your body knows something your calendar doesn't?" I laughed, told her it sounded like a self-help book. She smiled and said, "Maybe, but my stomach has been upset every Sunday night for 11 years, and I don't think that's a coincidence." I did not take that seriously enough. Neither did she. By 2003 she had the title, the salary, the respect of every person in the room. She also had an exhaustion that lived behind her eyes that no amount of sleep was touching. At dinner she told me, "I think my body has been trying to tell me something for 30 years, and I have been too busy to listen." and now it has decided to be louder. She retired at 64, not by choice. A chronic autoimmune condition had made the pace of her life unsustainable. Her gastroenterologist told her privately that in his experience, the body keeps an accurate account of everything the mind refuses to process. She moved back to Nebraska, started a garden, finally studied what she had always wanted to study, called me in 2009 and said she had never felt physically better in her adult life. She said, "Eleanor, I spent 40 years overriding the most reliable instrument I had, and the bill came due all at once." She died in 2014. She was 71. She had 7 good years in Nebraska. 7 years of the life her gut had been pointing towards since she was 22. The gut does not send warnings indefinitely. At some point it stops warning you and starts showing you. Now let me tell you about my own bill. I was a nutritionist. I want you to sit with the irony of that. 34 years advising patients on how to listen to their bodies, how to recognize inflammation, how to rebuild what decades of stress had quietly destroyed. I gave good advice. I gave it to everyone except myself. I knew about the gut-brain axis before most of my colleagues considered it credible. I understood that the vagus nerve carried information upward from the gut more than downward. I taught this. I went home and ate dinner standing over the sink at 9 at night in a marriage that had been functionally over for 6 years. His name was Robert, a kind man, genuinely kind, and genuinely wrong for me in a way my gut understood completely on the morning of our wedding. I spent the entire car ride to the church focused on my breathing, not from nerves, from a specific physical knowledge that I was about to make a decision my body did not agree with. I made it anyway, because the invitations had been sent, because my mother was in the front pew, because I had been taught that the gut was not a valid source of information when it contradicted what was practical and already in motion. We were married 21 years. They were not bad years. That is almost the worst thing I can say about them. They were years in which I was present the way a photograph is present, recognizable in the right place, but nothing behind it alive. I developed chronic acid reflux at 38. My doctor prescribed medication and told me to reduce stress. He did not ask what was generating it. I did not tell him, because I already knew, and knowing without being willing to act is its own particular kind of damage. Stop treating your body's signals as problems to manage. They are information. The most honest, unfiltered information you have access to. Your mind will tell you what you want to hear often enough to be dangerous. Your gut does not know how to do that. There is an exhaustion that comes from decades in a life your body never agreed to. It does not respond to sleep. It lives in the low-grade friction of being slightly wrong, shaped for the container you have been living inside. You may know exactly what I mean. You have probably been calling it something else. Stress, burnout, just the way things are. I left the marriage at 61. What I felt in the first weeks was not the relief I had been postponing for 20 years. It was grief, not for the marriage, for the time, for the signals I had received clearly, overridden competently, and could not now go back and answer differently. The gut had not been wrong. It had never been wrong. I had simply been too well trained in the art of ignoring it to let it finish a sentence. Here is what I do now. Every morning before the world gets its hands on my attention, I sit at this table with a cup of warm water and lemon, and I place one hand flat below my ribs and I ask a question I should have been asking since I was 30. What is true right now? Not what is planned, not what is expected. What is actually true in this body before the performance begins? The gut answers quickly when you stop drowning it out. You expect the signal to be faint after years of ignoring it. It isn't. The moment you go quiet, it answers. Without resentment, without drama, as though it has simply been waiting at the door. This whole time with the same message it has always had. 3 things I know to be true after 92 years. The body does not lie. The mind filters, performs, protects, occasionally deceives with good intentions. The body simply reports. When there is a gap between what your mind says and what your body says, the body is almost always closer to the truth. What you feed your gut is not separate from what you feed your life. The meals you eat standing up, rushing, over a screen. Those are not neutral acts of refueling. They are the physical expression of a life moving too fast to be inhabited. Slow down the eating and you will, without intending to. Slow down enough to hear everything else that has been waiting. The gut instinct and the gut microbiome are not separate. They are the same intelligence expressing itself on 2 levels. Honor one and you support the other. Suppress one and you damage the other. This is not philosophy, it is biology. Your challenge today is one thing only. Eat one meal in complete silence, sitting down. No screen, no book, no background noise. Before the first bite, ask your body what it actually wants. After the last bite, sit for 2 minutes and ask how it feels. Let the answer arrive without immediately explaining it away. It sounds simple. It will be one of the harder things you do this week. Because the silence lets in everything you have been keeping out. Let it in. That is where the information is. My neighbor Francesca is 87, sharpest person I know. She asked me last spring what the most important thing I learned in my career was. I said the body is always in the conversation. We just spend most of our lives pretending it isn't. She said, and when does it get the loudest? I said, when you have run out of ways to ignore it. I am 92 years old. I ate breakfast this morning slowly at this table, watching the light come through that window. My gut asked for warm broth and 20 minutes of silence before the day began. I gave it exactly that. It has been talking to me with that clarity for 7 years now. I have no idea what it might have told me during the 60 years I spent not asking. I know it would have been worth hearing. The ledger is still open. The conversation is still available. The only question is whether you are going to sit down for it before your body decides to have it without your permission. Share this with someone who has been explaining away the same signal for years and is running out of time to call it what it actually is. And before you go, one honest question. What has your gut been trying to tell you that you have been calling something else? Leave it in the comments. You may be surprised how many people are carrying the same untranslated message.